Anyway, I think he wanted too much money for it because I don't trying to sell it for him to get some cash. He's
In every record there's a story to be told. Into the world of music and more. Music and melodies and memories are in store. From Elvis to polka, we have it all. And Kenny's music and more, you'll have a ball. You'll have a ball. You'll have a ball. In every record.
There we
That
go.
was us.
You almost started it again.
Yep, little double clutch there. So, howdy.
Well, hello, everybody. It's another week. It's been 6 weeks since our last episode. We've had some crazy schedules here, all of us this summer, trying to make this all work. And if I'm correct, then we all say that this may be the only episode for August, and we're back on track in our normal schedule in September.
Yep.
So this is it, right, for this month now, and we'll catch you back next week. But anyway, let me get into it right now. Our person this week for the album is going to be Lance. And before I get into that, Lance, now that I've name dropped you, let me just give everybody who's checking into our show that is new the idea here. We're doing a record club. Basically, each of us takes a turn spinning a record, and then we talk about it afterward. And so that's the basic theme behind this, and it's Lance's week. So tell us all of your amazing details.
Okay, so I brought Smiley Smile by the Beach Boys. A few reasons I brought this album. I've really liked the Beach Boys since I was actually pretty young. I remember in school getting kind of made fun of by kids because I liked the Beatles and the Beach Boys. You know, like what kind of normal 9-year-old kid likes that? But so I really knew I wanted to bring one of their albums, especially when Brian Wilson ended up passing away. I definitely knew I was going to bring one, but I wasn't sure which one I wanted to bring. And when I heard this one covered end, I just knew it had to be because it's so different. When you think of the Beach Boys, this is not the type of music that's going to typically come to mind. And, you know, being a pretty big Beatles fan, it's kind of fun. You hear Brian Wilson and the rest of the Beach Boys say that when Rubber Soul dropped, they felt the pressure, right? This new band comes over and they're dropping this crazy album. So they tried to, you know, keep up with them by releasing Pet Sounds, which at the time not very critically acclaimed, but, you know, is now more appreciated than it was at that point. And then Pet Sounds pushed the Beatles to release Sgt. Pepper's. And then Sgt. Pepper's kind of helped push the Beach Boys to get what we have right here. So it's definitely kind of more on that psychedelic feel. Although once again, like I said, when you think the Beach Boys, you don't necessarily think psychedelic music. But yeah, it was a ride. It was a fun trip. I was excited to share this with the group, and I'll just kind of be curious to see what everyone's thoughts and opinions are on it. So I don't know who wants to kick us off. It looks like Kenny's just whoa, he can't even. He couldn't even.
This is one of my favorite albums ever. Actually, we were talking a little bit during the album playing, and I liked one song on the album.
I'll give $5 to anyone out there that comments and can guess what the one song is. If he doesn't say,
I won't say it right now. And so their album songs on here, okay, are Heroes and Villains, Vegetables. There you go. You can see the tracks right there. Vegetables, Fall Breaks, Back to Winter, She's Going Bald, Little Pad, Good Vibrations, With Me Tonight, Wind Chimes, Getting Hungry, Wonderful, and Whistle In. So there's all your tracks. So if you know which one is my favorite song, go ahead and link it in there right now and let us know if anybody can get that before you answer it. And if you know me, if you know the episodes, you know I'm the pop guy. So I'm the top 40. I love to listen to all the hits. And so there's only one hit on this record. And
Can I claim the $5?
Can I claim the $5?
There's 2 hits on it.
There's 2 hits. Oh yeah, you're right. There is. It was, for me, it was really hard because for me, the whole psychedelic thing, I'm not into that thing. I like catchy rhythms and tunes and lyrics, and I just didn't identify too much of it except for one song. So, but
there were lyrics in this album. They just weren't the avenue that you like to
traditionally hear it.
to hear it.
But I will say, now given that, I'm actually interested enough though that I will try to listen to it again at another time where I can try to focus in a little bit harder on some of the lyrics. Sometimes it does get hard because we get talking and I can get sidetracked, and so I'm not really like devoting like a lot of my attention to it, and so so I'm not saying that it's a never for me, but right now wouldn't be on the top of my list.
You know, so it's interesting. I must be what, twice your age now? I'm guessing. How old are you?
I'm 32.
Oh, okay, so not quite. Brad's twice your age. No, but
Shots fired.
When I hear music like this, I think of it in the context of what was going on at the time, and we know how the story ends with the Beach Boys. So when you see a lot of these guys doing their drug-addled psychedelic phase and whatever, it's just like, yeah, okay, whatever. I know that, I don't know. So I take it with a grain of salt at that point, but. You all know how much I love hippies.
Well, you listen to something like this, and you bring up the drugs and the psychedelic phase, and you wonder how much, if that was really a benefit to them.
Yeah.
I'm sure when they were recording this stuff, they thought they were recording the greatest stuff that was ever put down on tape.
It was like a season in hell.
Right.
No. The only people who ever
then you wonder if they took it out at some point in a moment of clarity and listened to it and thought, what the hell was that all about?
What were we thinking?
The only guys that have ever cracked the code ever have been AC/DC. They're like, our fans want us to put out the same album every 2 years, and let's not break the formula. So when I go back to the 60s and these guys go, oh, now we've got to do our conscious expanding psychedelic album, whatever. And I listen to this and I think, okay, and granted, I like the first 2 tracks on side 1. But it gets old really fast. But I'm just thinking, and I don't like music executives, but I'm just thinking, I'm feeling sympathy for the poor guy working for the label going, how in the world do I sell this? Guys, sober up, get back in here and cut Good Vibrations or something. We have to have something we can get this album on the air. Because I'm sorry, because if mom and pop and all the kids, they want the surf stuff, and then you got this, it ain't the same thing. So, I don't go to the Beach Boys for my psychedelics. I go to my Beach Boys for the beach music. But whatevs.
But as artists, if you get stereotyped like that and you become just a machine for that. Yes, AC/DC was able to do that. Most bands don't survive that change. They don't survive staying that. And we have to be really careful about throwing comments about psychedelic rock around, because applying today's standard to what was going on in the country and the culture in 1967 is completely different. So you can't use today's standards.
I call that presentism.
Plus, it's also the same group of people that will run around and call Jimi Hendrix a genius, and how fantastic all his albums were, and he was just as intoxicated as Brian Wilson was. And Brian Wilson was able to produce all these Beach Boy records more stoned than any of us could ever even walk through a room. So none of us could produce a record like that stone sober, let alone intoxicated under whatever it is.
Well,
you were really motivated with that one, Josh.
They were all intoxicated.
I can't
won't say
everybody
all of them,
was.
but It's
It was just
interesting.
the era, really.
You're right.
What
The
I-
California drug and hippie culture fueled this.
But you mentioned this is like their answer to Sgt. Pepper's, and I can see where it's at, in terms of the experimentation. But to me, like, Sgt. Pepper's is still a more refined product than what this is.
Oh, definitely.
Seems more focused.
Well, it's funny you say that, because these guys know I love to slam the Beatles to make some interesting
You like to
talk.
be edgy. You like to be edgy.
Just as we're having fun. But the reality is, if I say that, listening to this and then listening to the psych that I hear that from the Beatles and what came out, I would definitely have to say, like, I look at the Beatles a lot bigger now, because it was actually still more presentable, in my opinion.
had a bigger industrial machine behind the Beatles, though, too.
Okay.
I mean, they had a lot more resources at their disposal, especially in this era, right, in '67. So you're starting, in my opinion, you're starting to see this kind of the psychedelic shift. Now they go out of their way to make this psychedelic album, and like you were saying, there's not a lot of motivation behind the record label to support something like that because it's such a vast veer from center for the Beach Boys, right? But the Beatles could pretty much go around and create, if they wanted to create a country western album, there would have been an entire machine behind that, supporting it and pushing it out and forcing it into the mainstream.
Agreed.
So
Yeah. Well,
Brad?
I was just
Or
saying,
you got something?
I'm sorry. When I listen to a band, and especially if it's a new band, I really want to know as little about them as possible. So if I listened to this album and I didn't know it was the Bee Gees, I
it
wouldn't.
would be the Beach Boys.
I'm sorry, Bee Gees.
Close enough, though.
Yeah, well, they start with B
I
and
mean,
C, and no, but if I didn't know this was a Beach Boys album, halfway through track 3, I've moved on. But I don't know. It's just it's not. I'm not totally dumping and hating on the album. I'm just, I don't know.
I would prefer to listen to this album than any of the earlier Beach Boys stuff. The really early Beach Boys stuff.
Sunshine
Just
Pop?
Or the really early Bee Gees to spoil Kenny's.
Oh, don't go there.
It's just, and not knocking it. I mean, all those surf songs were really good songs. They're just not my cup of tea. And
Yep,
other people like them. More power to them. That's why I really like it when artists veer off course and do things that's not what's expected of them, because you might lose some fans, but you gain other fans, and bands have done that for.
But I think that answers too one of my comments earlier too. The reality is, as we were talking beforehand, whenever a group comes out, right, and we pigeonhole them for what they sound like, right? Album 2, album 3, album 4 becomes really hard, right? And especially as music changes, right, for them to continue to change. That's why I said I think one of the most amazing things is to look at people who've been able to be successful, over many years. Because look at how many one-hit wonders we do have, right? Because then when the music changes, they can't adapt and they can't fit to it, right? So to even try something like that, you're right. I will give you that. I didn't think of it from that sense. It's very ballsy, right? To say, hey, we're going to try to break our mold here, because the tendency, especially with the machine, now going back to your comment, right, is to do the money and to get that machine going. And when you look at groups like, I'm absolutely amazed when you see someone like Aerosmith, right, who can have a hit in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, right, and we can do that over generations. Elvis 50s, 60s, 70s. How many minutes?
They owned the
They owned
12
minutes.
12 minutes.
You gotta let it start.
Aerosmith owned the latter end of that to the kickstart in their career they got from Run DMC. So
That helped. That helped.
It doesn't matter.
No, it did help though. But
that
I'm
whole
just trying
thing,
to be.
they kind of get, in retrospect, and they still get kind of vilified for that. But
Why?
in my opinion, and I'm a big Aerosmith fan, if that didn't happen, we're not talking about Aerosmith in the same capacity as we are
Right,
today.
Right.
For sure.
It took balls for them to go outside of that and do that same thing again, because you have to continually find a way to reinvent yourself and to keep adapting, because music is always adapting, right?
Well-
We hopefully as people are adapting.
It follows. It's funny how it can follow a number of different formulaic paths with a band. They get an album, all right, they hit. Their next album, some heavyweight has come in to produce, and it's a little more polished. Then they get their creative control, and that's where a lot of these guys just completely fall apart, because they shouldn't have had that kind of creative control.
That's not even true, because what happens is you put an artist, if you put Van Gogh in a studio and say you have to create this portrait, they create that portrait, and they'll keep doing that, and eventually they'll be so famous that they're going to want to create their art. Brian Wilson did not make this record to be popular with the public or to make a bunch of money for a record label. They made that record because they wanted to make that record. And power to them. They got to the point where they were able to produce their own stuff and make their own music.
Man, I totally do not have your number tonight. I don't know what's going on here.
I think that's the goal for most artists.
To produce the
Just
music
to
they
express.
want to do.
To get in there, to break out, they got to toe the line. But eventually they want to spread their wings.
But I think what he's saying though is some
Some bands
some
can
people
do that.
some people can
Some
do that
can't.
because they have enough talent. Brian Wilson is considered a genius by many, but not all people can do that.
Some people don't have enough talent to break out
Yes.
on their own.
Right.
Yes, and that's
They
why I
can
thought
be
he's very
That's what I'm
controlled.
talking about. But that's
Yeah.
one of the different scenarios you have. You know, and then I think, well, even if you go to Wayne's World, when Mike Myers is talking about, even when I'm in my Ravi Shankar phase, you know, because I mean, that was kind of a thing back then. A lot of those bands of that era, they felt that they had to do that whole psychedelic thing because I think they felt pressured to do it. And it was a different time, like you said.
Well, we still haven't heard from Brad. Bad. What do you have about all this?
Well, just taking off what Clint said, I think he's right. I think a lot of people in that time frame were forced to do psychedelic records or try to follow the trend of the time.
You think they were forced or by the
Or
label?
did they?
I
or-
think
I
their
think
label
so.
would have begged them.
I think, yeah, I think some of it was like, it's working for them, let's try it. And at least they tried it. And I think what happened is, in the course of trying, some of these artists were able to do it, and some of them failed miserably. And there's some that are, they're quite hilarious, I think, that when you listen to some of them.
We've been
But
talking about
this,
that with your album, The
Well,
Zombies, too.
Some of it goes
Yeah.
to, I don't know.
So the Smiley Smile, I really thought that Brian, especially with Pet Sounds, they could not be locked into the surf thing forever.
No,
I mean,
point.
Right.
They just couldn't, and so they had to make, and that's why I kind of like what they're mixing in here. We've got cellos, we've got tape speed variation things, and it's just a little bit of experimentalism going on. Good Vibrations, of course, has a theremin in it. I mean, who would have done that again? You know, brought that instrument out and put it into a rock song or a pop rock song.
But it works.
And it
Genius.
works, and it was really, really cool. So I think, I just think they right after Pet Sounds, there was another album between this one and Pet Sounds, and I can't remember, but they had made a shift, and they were breaking out of what was their mold, and I'm sure they lost a lot of people at the time. I think they probably freaked a lot of people out, but as somebody said
What-
here tonight,
but
they pick up a new audience.
I guess, you know, I don't know. I wasn't around in the 60s, but I'd be curious as to what their fan base was by 1967 versus what it was in 1964 or 3, you know? How much of that fan base had already tailed off because they'd
Age
kind
out.
of
They moved
aged
on to
out,
the
you
Beatles.
know? We like the surf rock stuff, we're beach bums and stuff, but now we're not beach bums and we don't
We're
care
hippies
about
now.
it anyway, so
Right.
did they just stop following?
And something else was the craze, and people were following that. Maybe not so much this.
Right.
But I think there's some really interesting things going on here. And the subsequent albums that followed, like Sunflower and, they escaped me, I'm sorry. But some of those around 1970 or 71, somewhere in there, they made albums that now have some critical acclaim, but they weren't well known as far as the radio. They didn't have the hits, you know, going on. And so, yeah, it's like they transferred to becoming artists and were doing what they wanted to do. I can't fault them for that. But
Well, if you really want to make it look like I have no idea what I'm talking about, which is the case, tell the backstory behind this about the experimentation and the things in the original intent for this album, because that really puts to rest anything I've been saying complaining about hippies.
I'm not sure, Clint, I'm not sure that that I can explain it. I think there was a creative process, but I think some of it was the drug culture at the time. And everybody you talk to, or most people you talk to, whoever went in the studio, drugs did nothing good for any of what was happening.
No,
It was
that-
all slowed down. It slowed
that-
them down, and it
well,
messed
that-
them up.
That's kind of goes back to my point is when you're in the studio and you're using at the time they probably think it's expanding their creative
But
whatever.
we go, but you go and look at our favorite genre. All those guys were drunk
well,
and high
they
in
were
the
all,
80s.
yeah, they've all been drunk and high, but
Recording.
At least at that point in the 80s, they knew what they were.
Well, at least that was,
But
Coke. They could rock and roll.
when you kind of think, and I haven't delved much into that late, the 60s drug stuff, but especially like California. But you research it, it was some pretty dark shit. It wasn't
Yes.
Right.
it wasn't a good thing, and what was going on in San Francisco and Haight-Ashbury, and think of that as this big love and hippie commune. That was not a good
The
place.
CIA was experimenting with acid.
Yeah.
So it was pretty dark stuff that was actually happening in these people.
But let me touch up real quick on what you kind of hinted at is the fact too, because I talk about in my psych class whenever we talk about psychedelic drugs, and I get to my drug chapter, and I like to talk about psychedelic music, and it's a great segue because I'm always finding ways in my class to bring music into the classroom and have the kids hear all these different things that are out there. And I just think, especially for those musical learners, it's huge way for them to learn and to pick some of this stuff up. But when we talk about that psychedelic music, right, the reality is it's instigated, right, by the drugs. And we look, and what we see here with Brian Wilson is it looks like at this time, to hint back at your question on what you said, is that there is some drug use going on, and Brian Wilson is actually kind of losing himself in this whole process of this record, right? The record actually doesn't get completed. It's kind of like, reminds me of A Season in Hell, from Eddie and the Cruisers. Anybody who's watched the movie knows what I'm talking about. It's this lost album that was supposed to be huge, and it kind of disappears. Maybe this is the inspiration for that. I don't know. But what we see, right, is this idea here that Brian is so lost himself in this whole process
on the dark side
of trying to find something,
yeah.
right, that he needs a break. He actually drops out of the band, right, for a while, just like Eddie from Eddie and the Cruisers. Man, I just realized that is the inspiration for the movie.
But so drug call. Okay, let's roll with that for a second.
Okay.
So I see this differently again. Not just to be devil's advocate. So if you look at early Pink Floyd is very psychedelic band, right? There's no doubt about it. They were obviously under the influence of whatever narcotics they were under the influence of. And then you go and look at A Momentary Lapse of Reason, released in 1987, 88. It's very David Gilmour, Roger Waters is out, David Gilmour is in charge of Pink Floyd, and that album sounds like a Pink Floyd album that could have been released in the 70s. There is no doubt about it. Everybody's clean and sober, and it's done. So I think that people can take that drug and that experimentation and that mind-freeing and mind-altering things, and I think they can take it too far and become too addicted to it, and then all of a sudden it becomes debilitating to them, which is what really kind of happened to Brian, I think. And other people were able to enlighten themselves enough to come out with stuff, because you also have, at the same time, we also have the Frank Zappa is over, he's up in the hills, and Neil Young and Crosby, Stills and Nash and all these guys are doing the same thing and producing a different kind of music.
Okay.
So
Well,
That's
when
good.
I was in college, some friends of mine got together, and we got the college to put together a full-blown course on the 60s, and we had one of the art teachers teach several weeks on art. We had a history teacher come in. We had a literature teacher. The dean of students was a legit JFK investigator, so he talked about the JFK investigation and the assassination, all that stuff, and it was a full-blown, full-semester course on all this stuff. And the guy, this is so funny, this guy is like the most, tweed-patched suit academic, looks like the nerdiest guy on the planet. He comes in and his record collection rivals anything we could come up with, and he's bringing in original first pressing Mothers of Invention, stuff like that, and bringing in all the psychedelic stuff and talking. He's old enough to remember all of this stuff. And so when I guess my point is that, the psychedelic drug use by musicians was not happening in a vacuum. It's like It's not like outside the studio doors everybody was straight laced.
Right.
This is what was going on at the time, and it's reflective of that. And so, I guess when I hear some of these albums like this, I hear them in the context of what was going on everywhere at the time, not just in the bubble of a music industry thing.
One of the things I was going to say too is that this is a time where, from a technical standpoint, you went from mono single track recording, and then early stereo, you had 2 tracks to record on. But like Sgt. Pepper was done on 4 tracks, and so about that time, people were realizing that we have more tools to look at to make these sounds happen. Like if we play something backwards or we speed it up, they found that the studio could actually be part of the creative process. And so that is what I think we hear on this record, and a lot of those from that time frame, that they were just, and some of it's quirky, funny now, and some of it's just weird studio trickery things that they're doing. They bounce back and forth between the speakers, and they add this instrument in, and because they had more tracks to play with on tape. And so that is what's happening, I think, on a lot of these records in the late 60s. And of course,
Right.
then they got 8-track and 16 and 24, and away we go.
Yeah.
But I think that was part of the process.
Right, and that's a good point, that a lot of this could just stem from the technological advancements that they were.
Trying to play with.
Or creating or inventing themselves to get the sounds that they're hearing in their heads.
Yeah.
No, I remember telling my boys about that when they were first starting getting into music. Even though, like I'm a Christmas music connoisseur, and I used to do a Christmas station, just a small thing in my garage, but it reached out a little bit until 102.5 took my frequency. But like even then, back in the 40s, where they'd be singing, and they would do simple tricks like jingle bells, jingle, all the way, and just that pause though. But what that was something that set that song apart. Well, then later on, you start coming up with technological advances in the recording process and the instrumentation, the electronic instruments that come along, things like that. And every now and then, these bands would come up with some sort of little ear-catching gimmick, and there you go. But yeah, why not? Experiment, and like I said, theremin. I mean, I enjoy watching Frank Zappa play the bicycle.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, why not?
Yeah, and I think that's it was just part of the process and the time. They realized that in the studio they could be creating the music. It didn't have to be completely performed perfectly on 1 or 2 or 5 takes or whatever. As the whole band played along, they did overdubs and they did some things like that.
And that's what you see at the 60s, that in the early days of popular music, the studios were basically a 9-to-5 place, and they'd have their studio musicians. They'd cut the instrument tracks, and they'd say, Elvis, get your ass in here and cut the vocal track, and that's what he'd do, and it was done. And it was just the same guys, and it was very, like I said, it was like a 9-to-5 thing, just them going to the office.
Yeah, that's how the Beach Boys were doing it there. Brian Wilson working with the Wrecking Crew while the rest of the boys were literally out on tour. They'd come back and they'd have all the music cut and they'd just record the vocals.
In the 60s, they started, hanging out in the studio, living in the studio, setting up equipment in different areas of just the building itself, trying to get different sounds, recording something in the bathroom. Let's check this hallway. I like the acoustics in this hallway.
Led Zeppelin. But that is some of those bands that became popular, and then to gain some more of that artistic control and that more that freedom, they were building their own studios, or they were experimenting in different places. And
well, they were doing that all through, even the 90s. They were doing that. Like Stone Temple Pilots. Third album was built in. The studio was built in a house, and I think all the drums in that, or a lot of the drums for that album, were recorded outside.
Right. Paisley Park. The first
U2
Paisley Park designed the studio downtown here in Bismarck.
Really?
Yep.
I didn't know that.
That was one of our bragging rights early in the day.
Well, U2 was so amazed with the sound at Sun Studios that they would do one of their albums there, at Sun Studios for the sound.
Yeah, 9 Inch Nails, the studio at the where
Celio Drive.
Studio Drive, Roman Polanski's house.
Sting. Same sort of thing. Bring on the night.
The other thing I would like to mention too, if you do like Smiley Smile and you listen to it, and you want to hear what maybe the rest of the project would have sounded like, or
Great comment
how it's
there.
completed, check out the Smile Project. You'll notice here too that Clint has the graphic up. This is the mono of the record, which is cool because it was done in mono and stereo. And but anyway, you can, in 2011 they released the Smile Sessions. You might want to check that out. And then also Brian's version of that. There's like 2 different versions of it, and they're both really good in their own sense. If you really like the Smiley Smile album.
And that's a great thing to say too, because so for those of you that don't know, and I can't remember if we mentioned it all at the beginning, but the project that we're talking about here in this psychedelic sound, that Brian Wilson would end up losing himself in the process. The record, the album was split, right? It was cut. And so this album only has like some of the songs, and then they tweaked some other songs onto there. And so it's not the completed project, which was the Smile Project, right? Wouldn't fully come out until this, what
2011.
2011.
Yeah, and some of the tracks wound up on other albums, but you get to hear what were the songs for the original album intent.
So if you're really intrigued by this, you can go on to that next project and really try to hear what Brian Wilson was trying to do with this. And I think that would be interesting to hear that now. I want to hope maybe you should bring that in. We can play that. Yeah, on one. That would be an interesting listen to see what it was intended to. But I've got to conclude that with, and it kind of shows some of my childhood for you all to see why I am the way I am.
I've been wondering.
I love the story that I grew up with when it comes to the Beach Boys. So why I'm an Elvis fan to this day is my dad was an Elvis nut, and his whole collection was Elvis stuff, and he had a couple other albums. But I would sit there and I would play them, and then we'd go over to my uncle's house on Friday, Saturday nights, and we'd always party 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. And our parents were pretty bad. They would buy us alcohol. We would party with them all the time. And he would listen to Elvis all night. So all we would ever do was listen to Elvis all the time. Well, one of my uncles came in who was a Beach Boys fan, and I still remember Uncle Joe. He came in and tried to play the Beach Boys, and he was kicked out of the house because you didn't play the Beach Boys. So I like the Beach Boys, but obviously I love Elvis more, and so that's where you can see where I picked it all up. It was my dad and my uncle. So
that's who I blame. Okay.
That's who you can blame.
Picked up after the wrong uncle. You should have.
Yeah.
You should have
Uncle
followed
that
the
brought
other
the
one
beach
out of the
house
house.
is the one that you should have.
I should have ran after Uncle Joe.
Joe, Uncle Joe.
Right?
Joe's got it going on.
And so with that, hey, let's segue into our albums. Subway
into some other albums.
So what are our albums? So in the store here every month, right, we put up albums on the wall. We each pick one, and we're going to kind of go through and give why we picked this album. And so I will start right now, since I've got mine already, to keep the flow going here. I am a huge Bee Gees fan as well, and I absolutely love their harmonies. And so I have many a time been driving down the road and trying to do the falsetto disco Bee Gees, and people driving by, and I'm just feeling it, right, thinking I'm hitting that falsetto because no one's there to prove that I didn't, right, hit that note. And so I love the Bee Gees, I love the early Bee Gees, I love the disco Bee Gees, I love it all. And so this one is typically going to give you all of your early hits. And so you've got Words, which Elvis actually did a version of that one.
Of course he did.
Of course he did.
I bet it was so much better.
It was
to
so
you
much
guys.
better.
Yeah,
Oh,
probably the
the
best
Bee Gees-
cover
look at-
ever.
The Bee Gees couldn't
Revolution.
even perform
Yeah.
it.
Do you want me to do
They should never.
Do you want me to do a little version in Elvis voice?
No,
No.
because we
No.
can't afford the rights.
Yeah.
It's only one.
Demonetized.
Yeah, they just got
Thanks,
canceled.
Kenny. We're
There you
doing
go.
The show in
I started
more
a
ways than
joke.
one.
Massachusetts, To Love Somebody. There are so many bangers on this. It's a great album, and of course these three guys are absolutely amazing and flawless.
I don't know if the Bee Gees are synonymous with the word banger.
I just can't like the Bee Gees because they took the money that Cream generated and they screwed those guys out of their money, and that
Record label. Robert Stigwood.
Robert Stigwood funneled all that money into the Bee Gees
Smart
because the
guy.
Bee Gees are going to be the next big
Smart
thing.
guy.
Some people
Yeah.
want to think like that.
Yeah,
Hey, work for the Bee Gees.
yeah.
My
Worked
boss,
for Eric Clapton. He's still alive.
Right.
my boss at my previous job, somebody took a studio portrait of which is the Gibb guy, the baldish one. But anyway, swapped it out because he looked so much like my section chief, and put it on the bookshelf in his office. I can't tell you how many high muckety mucks came in and out of there. And we're looking over on the bookshelf, and here's one of the Bee Gees instead of my boss's. It took like a month or two before somebody discovered it. It was very good.
Who's next?
Well, I just wish there was an album with more bangers than the best of the beat. Oh my gosh!
There it is.
Here it is. So my vinyl sold. So we found this CD version, but I crashed
And
by
just
Dave
get it.
Matthews Band. This is their sophomore album, and one of my favorite phrases when it comes to music is you have your whole life to write and make your first album, and then you sign into labels, and there's more constricted timelines, and that's why a lot of times a sophomore album ends up falling short. Maybe you have some leftover material from that first album, but this is not that case.
Not
This album, I don't think there's a bad song on it. It's really amazing. I love Dave Matthews Band. I've seen them a few times in concert, and they just don't disappoint. I will say I'm one of those who probably prefers listening to their studio stuff over their live recordings. I'm just not a huge live guy, but wow, if you have not listened to this album, you really gotta check it out. I don't know what more I can really say about it. Yeah, just kicks butt. There's a reason it's sold, right?
Watch out around the tour bus.
There was a great intro on that one, Lance. That was good.
Yeah, right. You like that?
I was actually mesmerized. Brad.
Yeah, and here's something totally different that no one's gonna realize or fit in with any of this.
One of my
really,
best bargain bin albums.
Yes. Bobby Gentry, iconic voice. I've kind of followed her. My dad was the one that actually loved her song Fancy, which Reba McEntire
I was going to say,
redid.
Reba did that one?
Yeah, but you got to listen to Bobby
I will
Gentry's.
now. I didn't know.
I'm sorry, it's much better. And she follows the arrangement pretty close. But anyway, iconic voice, just a real kind of... There's just nothing like her, and it's a different pace. It's not a rock album. It's a folk album. It's just her and a guitar most of the time. They got into some more extravagant arrangements a little bit later on, but she's just the real deal. As far as if you think of a voice and you know the purity of a single voice and a guitar, there's a lot going on here. Highly recommended. And yeah, she kind of just evaporated from show business, and I believe she's still alive today. I think she's in her early 80s, and just but this is the first album, Ode to Billy Joe.
You think she's still fancy?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure.
Elvis didn't cover any of her songs.
Did Elvis cover?
Oh.
He didn't cover.
He didn't cover any
improved.
songs.
He improved.
Yeah, that's true. He improved.
Mike, what do you got? You got another sold
Here's
album.
Elvis didn't
Here's
cover
this
any
old
songs
one
off
that
this one.
Elvis didn't cover. I had to go with the CD one because mine sold. Motley Crue, Shout at the Devil. Follows in the path of what Lance was saying about sophomore albums and what was dubbed the sophomore slump. So this is like the single most important album in my life.
Why?
I may or may not have dozens of copies of this on.
Oh, I thought you were going to
various
say
formats.
kids. Because,
Kids. No. So I remember
Got a copy in every town.
1990, my cousin had a copy of Dr. Feelgood. And he said, I got this new tape. And you got to listen to it. It's awesome. So we listened to Dr. Feelgood. And it was like a religious experience for us. We were like, what the hell is this? And we'd listen to, at the time, Poison was big and Warrant. And that's what was, at the time in Bismarck, the only hard rock you heard on the radio was if it made its way into the top 40.
yes.
So a year later, 1991, I had like $10 in my pocket to go to a garage sale. My parents' friends were having this garage sale, and they had all baseball cards at the time and old comic books, same stuff. You know, a kid my age at that time would buy, and I did this little tray with cassettes. Thumbing through there, and in there it just had the cassette. Shout at the Devil. Didn't have the case or nothing, just the cassette. And Motley Crue. I'm like, what the hell? I didn't think, what the hell is this at that time? I wasn't. But, you know, I knew Motley Crue from the year prior from Dr. Feelgood. My cousin had Dr. Feelgood. But I didn't know Shout at the Devil, but I knew Motley Crue. So I took it home, put it in my tape player, and was like, I didn't know what the hell I was listening to. Like, I really, in my 8 or 9 year old mind, like, I thought it was a completely different band. Like, if you're that age and you hear Dr. Feelgood, like, that's what you know. And then you heard Shout at the Devil.
Especially the opening.
Yeah,
with
I thought it was a completely different. And of course, at that time, I didn't really know what they looked like either, because I didn't have the case, and it just. So then
That's
it's,
Satan was talking.
That's how I was at age.
Satan was talking. He
yeah.
said.
So anyway, from that point, it just was like that. This is it. That's my album. And then you get into the, you know, start backtracking, and I follow Motley Crue through the '90s, which they spent most of that decade trying to destroy their career. But you know, I like just little things you pick up on this album. Is that somewhere on it in the liner notes is that this album may contain backwards messages. This album doesn't contain backward messages.
Nope.
But imagine if you were a 14-year-old kid going into a record store in 1983 and you're getting into hard rock. You see this album that's the LP version just has like a glossy pentagram on it. And you pick it up and Shout at the Devil, song Shout at the Devil, Bastard, you know. And then it says, oh, it could contain backwards messages. You're going to buy it based just on the imagery, because this is something I'm not supposed to have.
Well, you know,
And,
I had that exact same conversation with my son in Walmart yesterday. I can't remember what we were looking at, but it was, I don't remember, it might even been that album. I don't remember. Anyway, we were looking at that at Walmart, and I said, you have to remember, in the 80s, there was this whole slew of rock bands that all did the devil stuff and the pentagrams and all. It's kind of like the psychedelics. Like, the metal bands were all chasing this whole devil worship, whatever stuff.
Even if they weren't, but to portray
Even if
it.
they weren't, because it was a great way for the kids to rebel. You buy that, and you're just, you know, thumbing your nose at your parents or whatever. It's subversive. Every generation of teenagers wants to be subversive. I just thought it was noteworthy that a lot of these, you know, or the umlauts under the O, or that kind of thing. I mean, there's been a lot, you know, some kind of jokes and memes about that. Not to take away from Motley Crue, but I'm just saying that was kind of the thing at the time. Is you had to have the devilly thing, and you know.
and one thing I was just back to the album, and my personal opinion on most cover songs, for the most part, they're just filler on an album, and most of the time they feel like filler. This song's got Helter Skelter, which is a Beatles song, which fits perfectly with the, you know, it doesn't feel like filler. It fits with the flow of the album and the feel of the album. Now, every other cover Motley Crue maybe has done has felt like filler to some extent, but that's one of the rare occasions, in my opinion, where a cover song fits the tone of the album and it doesn't feel like it was just like, we need another song, let's throw this on there. So, that Shout at the Devil.
I had that very same experience with Ace Frehley. I was 9 years old and I got the cassette with no case, and
Well, I was going to just say on that quick devil comment, I remember all my friends when they were talking about AC/DC, you know what it means? After Christ, devil comes.
Who said that? Because they all said it was a gay and lesbian thing too.
Did they?
Yeah.
So there was so much of that devil thing that people wanted to.
Well, they all
Yeah.
thought Kiss was. They were devil worshippers too. Knights in Satan's Service. That was the acronym Kiss supposedly stood for.
well, see, that's the thing. It's part of that whole mystique. Just like I said, the pentagrams on the album covers and stuff like that. So,
Josh, what do you got?
Blind Faith. 1969. This is the band that Eric Clapton will form after Cream is destroyed to fund the Bee Gees.
That's a great way.
To get away from the infighting of Jack Bruce and Ginger Baker is what actually broke up Cream. None of them could get along with each other. So when Cream dissolves, Eric Clapton goes to start this new project. He joins forces with a young Steve Winwood to form Blind Faith. They released one album. They do a live concert in New York. And then that's the end of the band because Ginger Baker ends up being the drummer in this band. So Steve Winwood wanted a really good drummer. He knew Ginger Baker. Eric wasn't a big fan of having Ginger Baker in the band because he had just worked with Ginger Baker and they didn't get along very well. But he's like, well, maybe I don't like Jack Bruce more, so we'll give this a try. And it didn't work out very well. Now this is the second cover. The first cover is altered or is deemed inappropriate and was pulled from the shelves fairly quick. You can still find it. Won't show it on here, of course. This is actually the second cover. It was the inverse of the original cover, so this would have been the back side, the original cover. But you have, there's two really, really good songs on here. Can't Find My Way Home is on here. This was originally a Steve Winwood song. It's been covered lots and lots of times by lots of different artists. Even well into the 80s and 90s, rock bands were doing covers of Can't Find My Way Home. And then Presence of the Lord was an Eric Clapton song that was recorded on here. He'd go on to do that again, but it never had the same feel because it wasn't Steve Winwood singing it. So if you like Steve Winwood, a lot of people from the 80s when Steve Winwood had his hits were, this Steve Winwood is a brand new guy and he's kind of cool, and my guitar teacher was like, well, actually, he's not new, and you should go listen to this stuff. So, yes, Blind Faith. Very good record. Worth a listen.
Well, I did listen to that one time, I want to tell you, and it brought me a higher love.
Nice.
I am going to check that one out when I get home.
That was good. Come on.
Not hippie culture.
No, see, well, then I'm good because I don't have any inherent bias to take in there. Well, as the 80s new wave guy, I brought Missing Persons Spring Session M because I consider Missing Persons and especially some of the tracks on this song be some of the quintessential 80s new wave sound, as I call it. Windows, None of Your Business, Destination Unknown, a lot of people know that one got huge airplay on MTV. Walking in LA, Tears, Words, I mean, gee whiz, there are a lot of really good tracks on here, and like I said, if I want my 80s new wave vibe, it's this or like the instrumental DNA by Flock of Seagulls, something like that. That's what, to me, that was the sound that really, really spoke to me in the early 80s when new wave was coming on. And so, and of course, Missing Persons, they got to have a Frank Zappa tie-in, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, new wave, love it.
Sounds good. So we've got a lot of good albums. So all of these albums, obviously, right? They're all in the store. So remember to come on down and pick up any of these anytime. And so, or other records we have down here.
The customers must be agreeing because we had 2 of them sold this. In fact, actually, I don't know because it's been so long since we did a show. I think somebody bought mine as well.
Your
And then
original pick, yeah.
Yeah, Weird Al. And so, on the 40th anniversary of Dare to Be Stupid. So
Right.
It was on the wall.
So otherwise, I realized we didn't grab the cup, so I'm gonna go down and grab. I told them I'm gonna pick 2 names, so I'm gonna run down and grab the cup since I'm on the edge here, and I'll be right back.
Okay, now that the boss is gone, we can actually have a good conversation. Fun time. No.
Okay. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
talk about a group that's not penned into one genre and likes to,
So I heard they're pulling all their music from Spotify.
They are.
though.
really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I heard too, I should
That's
say.
one of my friends listens to them quite a bit, and I've always meant to check them out. But yeah, and I'm like, well, there goes my easy way of listening to their music.
Yeah, because they want you to get. That's the downfall to the
Well, you got to eat, and Spotify don't pay worth crap.
Spotify doesn't. Well, here's my take on it. And streaming doesn't pay shit.
Yep.
And if that's the fact, if it's about money, which it is about money and making money on their art, then just go back to physical media. Get rid of the streaming and
Yep.
It's only available
I
on
like that.
physical media.
Rick Beato-
Spotify's my life though. Like at work, I have that on in my headphones constantly. Like
See,
I don't know if I can live without it.
I rip all of my stuff and put it into my server so I can still stream it wherever I want, but at least it's my physical copies. But Rick Beato did an episode talking about how much does streaming actually pay, and boy is it pathetic. And then that's even before you have to split it with everybody. And it's like because everybody gets a cut. So yikes.
Ooh, this is one from last
So-
time even.
We try to pick out some names on here, and so there's a couple names we're going to draw here. So if you recognize your name, come on down and tell us, and we'll give you $10 credit in the store. So
The first one is Charles Wynn. So Charles won $10 off at the store. Go Charles.
Rock on.
Next name is Dave Schmidt. And Dave Schmidt pick was from last month actually. It was Stone Temple Pilots, and that was one of my choices. So
Oh.
let's just put that out there.
Yeah.
So Charles Wynn and Dave Schmidt.
what are you getting for votes down over there? You get-
I'm
have good
calculating them right now as we speak.
So
Charles didn't put his unless it was in.
So now, while they're doing that, real quick too, I want to say something here that we had talked about. I love giving record hints to everybody too, and so Brad had mentioned something before we got on the air, and we might have talked about it on a previous episode, but a lot of times
Motley?
on records we
Well,
hear
it's 'cause it's
right. You're going to
sold
see
by
mono, we're going to hear stereo that we said, but sometimes you're going to see words like stereo, electronically processed, or duophonic. Brad, tell us real quick again about that. What does
It's
that
hard
mean?
to do it very quickly, but what they did is they had mono recordings, and when stereo started taking off, stereo's kind of like 1958 or so, and when they started doing stereo recordings, and that started taking off sales-wise, and about 68, 69 is when they quit making monophonic records. They thought that they needed to take those mono tracks and somehow create a stereo effect out of them so people would buy them and be entertained in a stereo setting. But a lot of times it's fake stereo basically is what it is. Fake,
And what people may
fake
not
news,
know,
fake stereo.
some of our younger people may not know. So mono means, right, we have one sound coming out of both channels. When it's stereo, right, we're bouncing.
Right.
You're going to hear different sounds coming back.
Discreet.
and a mono system back in the day was basically just one speaker. You didn't have an array of speakers or four, and 5.1 and 7.1. It was all just one speaker.
And then-
But the one thing I will say is that Capitol had their version of it. It was called duophonic when they just did a slight delay between the two channels. It was the same information, just with this slight reverb or echo on it, and it was. I find it very annoying. I'm a purist when it comes to that stuff, and so I always look for the mono, and fake stereo is bad for you.
As an audio editor, so a technique that I'll use to if I want to fake a stereo effect on something is basically I'm just taking like a notch filter. So let's just say, for instance, you're looking head on at a graphic EQ, and I'll take my left channel and I will notch every other frequency to some degree. Then I'll go to the right channel and I will notch the alternating frequencies. And it's just enough to fool the undiscriminating ear to where it has kind of a stereo sound. And what you'll hear that, and I don't know anything about recording. I do narration and sound effects, Foley. I know nothing about recording music. But it seems to me when I listen to pretty much any record and you're listening to somebody play guitar and there's that fake stereo effect, that's what I think they're doing, because as they're playing higher or lower notes, it kind of depends on where spatially that instrument sounds.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly what they did, Clint. And what they take this full range recording, and they take but this was much simpler. They took the high end and stuck it over on the right channel, for example, and they took the low end and stuck it on the left channel.
Ooh.
So it's just this weird sound that you get out of when you have two speakers trying to recreate that. It's fake stereo is bad for you.
That's like I do video animation and that sort of thing and 3D work, and you'll get that now in movie studios on these 3D movies. They'll shoot them in 2D, and then they'll do what we call 2.5D. What they'll do is they'll digitally rotoscope or cut out different characters are part of the scenery, and then they'll move those spatially. So you have a flat object in front of another flat object, and if you know how to do that, it will give you headaches. I can't watch. I just don't even watch 3D movies because so many of the studios started going to this 2.5D model, especially because if it's not, people on a live set with a live background where everything is composited anyway, then it's super easy to do that. But all I see is slab, slab, slab. It could be 2x6s. It would be the same effect. It's flat thing, flat thing, flat thing, and it's disorienting. And even like you were talking about, Brad, even the non-discriminating ear, your average Joe is going to hear low frequency over here and high frequency over here and know, well, this sounds like crap. And he won't know why, but he'll know that it does.
Yeah, press the mono button. That will work. And of course, there was some marketing going on then too, because the mono records were, out for a while. They were $1 cheaper. So when they had stereo editions come, they were $1 more. And so some people just thought that was crazy. I'm not spending $1 more. And they would buy the mono ones. But if they were true stereo, like our album tonight, Smiley Smiley is this true stereo recording. It's going to sound much better. So
if it's in mono,
Anyway.
it'll be fake.
well, if it's in mono, they did a mono mix of this.
Oh, they did. Okay.
So in fact,
Oh,
that's
you're right. I remember
that's
you
a
said
pressing I have. But if you see electronically enhanced for stereo across the top of your record, you won't see that in the after 1968 or 69. But if you have those 60s albums that have that on there, that's a listening nightmare.
So there you go. By mono or stereo. And now, what are our results over there?
The Bee Gees one.
Oh! I saw you make a face, so I knew. I saw you guys make a little face, and I'm like, I bet you I won.
Yeah, it got 3 whole votes.
Did I get any votes?
You got one.
Oh, really?
I started a
Blind
joke.
Faith got 2.
But to be realistic, Lance and I both sold.
Yeah, so we went.
So they
So-
technically
They so
So yeah, people can't vote if they can't see the album anymore.
there you
I
have
would
it.
say
They
technically
vote with their dollars.
Oh! But anyway, I think that's probably it for this week's episode. We've got a lot covered. We will be back at the end of September,
Yep.
right?
The last Sunday of September.
No, I'll be back in town.
Yeah, you'll be back.
Who's up?
It's back to.
Actually, we haven't Clint. I was thinking about we actually gonna have Clint pick one and then me.
Yeah, I've never done that before. I'll have to take that responsibility very seriously.
And you've got some extra time.
I do have some extra time. Well, I gotta.
How are you
find
gonna change the world in YouTube with your one pick?
Well, I don't know.
No pressure.
I have to pick something that all of us can talk about for an hour.
Well, we can find something to talk
pick
about.
up.
Okay.
Pick,
He's brought.
pick Ozzy or Black Sabbath.
Yeah, that's not happening.
Not Elvis.
No.
Elvis.
Hey, but the only Elvis one I did, we weren't live on, so I might have to do one just so we can get an Elvis conversation
don't
going.
pick
I don't know if you
We
have
had
to.
we had a really good conversation after that album. It had nothing to do with Elvis.
Bill Withers is what my last album was.
It's
so.
got to be a greatest hits of some sort.
Can I close with an Ozzy quote? I
Yes.
hope I get this
Oh,
right.
we had some deaths real quick. One of
Ozzy was spoken of a little bit here tonight, and they
Lots of
asked,
sure.
and it kind of goes in with the. They asked Ozzy Osbourne if he was into that dark magic, black
Yes.
magic, satanic, whatever, and he replied, "We're about as dark as a box of chocolates."
Yeah.
And I love that quote because I think that says a lot.
Well, that's it's just they're just songwriters. They're
Most-
storytellers.
Most of their music people don't realize was actually warning against the downfalls of Satanism, but the Satanists took it and made it their soundtrack to everything. But literally, Black Sabbath was because of Geezer Butler waking up to a dream and seeing a shadowy figure. That's when he was super deep in Aleister Crowley and stuff.
Yeah.
That song is literally a warning against Satanism, but everyone listens to it because it has the the band tritone. Yeah, the tritone is what kicks it up, and the church banned that tritone. It was a banned music, but it was all image, right?
And named
it just,
after a movie.
It was all image.
So again, right, it becomes a part of the whole production part, right?
Yeah.
And even reminded me of some Alice Cooper right? If you know Alice Cooper is a lot different than the persona he portrayed in his
Well,
music.
Alice Cooper goes, well, he, in the 70s, that was his, he kind of fell into being that character, but he's kind of like where Clint was going with AC/DC. Alice Cooper knows his fan base, and he's not going to defer much from what he knows his fan base is going to go after.
In the 90s, he was given the key to the city of Alice, North
Alice,
Dakota.
North
When he played Fargo, he went to Alice and got the key to the city.
Nice.
And
So-
the plug for Alice Cooper, he just had a new album drop this week, so
Pretty good.
pretty decent.
So there you go. We closed it with some great other little tidbits there, right? With Ozzy and Alice Cooper. So with that, we'll see you all. Same bad time, same bad channel.
In
Right.
6 weeks.
6 weeks. Peace.
Drive safely.
Kenny's music and more, a place like no other. With records and cassettes, he's a music lover. Blues, rock, country, and more to explore. 10,000 vinyls and memorabilia galore. Come on down to the shop, there's something for all. Step into the world of music and more, where melodies and memories are in store. From Elvis to polka, we have it all. At Kenny's Music and More, you'll have a ball. A teacher and a DJ with a passion so deep. Kenny knows every lyric even in his sleep. His collection is unique, a treasure trove. In Bismarck, Indy, it's the place to just rove. In every record there's a story to be told.